I'll give you guys some time to work, don't worry. Alright, so let's look at printing. So the critical thing with printing is understand the layers, right? So we talked about layers, and then within layers we have colors, right? So certain colors represent certain line weights. You know, if we look at down here, we have magenta, which is we're envisioning as a heavy line, cyan maybe like a medium line, and red as a light line. So the other thing we've been doing is drawing stuff at 1 to 1. Right? So 1 inch equals 1 inch. Does that make sense to everyone? What we need to start to do now is start to set up a layout where we can start to scale the drawing. Okay? And this is where I was telling you it takes a lot of steps. So take notes. I'm recording this. I'm going to upload it. And you guys can watch it many, many times. But if we look down here at the bottom left, it's a little hard to see. It says model, layout, layout 2. We have two different types of sort of work spaces in AutoCAD. We have model space and paper space. Okay. Model space represents where we draw all our line geometry, our model. Paper space represents our sort of printed potential. So what our output's going to be. Okay. So if our output's going to be 8.5 by 11, we have to understand what 8.5 by 11 means, right? And 11 by 17, right? So these are standards. Is that making sense so far? The next hardest thing is to understand scale. So we've been drawing 1 to 1, right? 1 inch equals 1 inch. Eventually, as we make different types of representational drawings, we draw to scale, right? So if we're working on a building and we're trying to represent a detail, we might be able to draw it 1 to 1, which it might fit on an 8.5 by 11. But if we try to draw the whole floor plan and draw it at 1 to 1, it would be a little absurd, right? You'd be drawing, like if I saw, draw the floor plan of Harold Washington at 1 to 1, you'd be drawing at 1 to 1, right? It'll be a big piece of paper, or a lot of little pieces of paper. So we use scale, right? So architectural scale. How many people understand architectural scale? All right, how many people don't? Like when I say architectural scale. All right, so let's go over that. I'm going to pause. Go further, it'll make more sense. So scale. All right, so let's go back to AutoCAD. So at the bottom here, we have the ability to add more scales. Drawing. So there's different layouts on here. I hate that pop-up. So there's some existing layouts. I'm going to come here to new layout. So it's up to you. The best is probably just watch me go through this, and then from there you guys can replicate what I'm doing. So if I click on that, we have a new layout. The reason I don't want to take these two because I want you guys to know how to add new layouts. As soon as we go on this new layout, we have layout 3. If I right click on this, there's a couple things I can do. The first thing I want to do is drafting standard setup. Let's go to that. And we'll leave everything. Let's default that out. I'm going to double click on it. That's fine. We won't change it there. We'll look at it from there. And then we can see here what's being represented as our paper. Okay? And then what happens with our paper, it creates this viewport, which is represented as a rectangle, is us looking through the paper to model space. So I don't know if that makes sense. Now that we activated it, if we right click on it, we're going to get a bunch of other options. The main thing we want to do is Page Setup Manager. And again, I think these video recordings will help because To write all these steps down will be impossible. All right. So this is our page setup manager. There's some defaults here. By default, it's set to layout 3. We want to go to modify. And then this opens up our printer. Okay. What we want to do is switch this to Adobe PDF. We're never going to be printing straight to the printer. Why? Because we want to sort of preview what we're printing before we just start burning paper. Does that make sense? So PDF, for those of you that don't know what PDF is, it's a file format. What does PDF stand for? Sorry, does anybody remember? Which is nice because we can preview it. We can have an idea what's happening. Okay? So that gives us some options. We can say what size we want to print as. So we can change, this is where we change the size. So we can change it to tabloid, which is 11 by 17. We're going to do everything in letter for right now. Okay? But what we can do next is we can start to define the plot style under the plot style table. Okay? I'm going to skip over that for right now. We're going to do it later. But this is where we're going to control all our line weights. Right now I just want to set up the sheet, and we can go in later and change the plot style. Okay? When we go to plot. Make sense so far? So this is where we define the plotter. Because ultimately, AutoCAD's saying you're going to want to get this stuff out of the computer. We want to keep it as a PDF, as a digital file. We don't want to send it to a printer. All right? And then we can say portrait or landscape. So you can change this. If I hit OK, it turns it into portrait, right? So it's running this way. If I go back to modify and change it to landscape, we'll change it to landscape, right? So maybe your orientation is going to be different. Say your detail wants to be more vertical. Portrait versus landscape, right? So we can adjust those. All right? Does that make sense? So we really didn't change anything other than it's PDF, which is not even so critical because we can change it later. So far, so good? So we really didn't change much. The next thing is if we pick this, we can start to stretch this, okay? And I always like stretching this past my sheet. The reason why I do that is so I don't get this number 1 rectangle. There's ways we can deal with that, but it guarantees it goes beyond my sheet, okay? And I know where the edge of my sheet is. So this is where I start to look through. I'm looking through. Now I want to actually put my hand through the window and start manipulating the drawing, right? So I'm going to type in MS for model space. Hit enter, and that activates the window. So now I can do this. Okay? And what I want to do is sort of center my geometry, and maybe I'm just interested in this stuff right now. I want to center that as best I can in the middle of my paper. Once I'm done doing that, I type in PS. PS brings me back to paper space. If I start panning now, I'm outside of my sheet. Okay? So again, MS, I'm in my sheet. PS, PS, I'm out of my sheet. Okay?
When you stretched it, you were stretching the...
Just with grips.
You were stretching the model space beyond the paper space?
No, the paper space viewport beyond the paper space. The model space window beyond the paper space. I think you said it right, yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to type in properties. I want to get my properties up. The reason why I want my properties, as soon as I select, oops, we don't want to do that. As soon as I select my window here, I have an option under here for scale. So there's standard scale, and right now it's custom. So as soon as I select my viewport, I get one of my miscellaneous properties as scale, standard scale. This is where we start to change the scale. And I have to scroll here to get to the architectural scales. So there's 1/4 inch, there's 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4. So this is 6, it looks like 6 inches equals a foot, which is half scale fits. So here there's really no right or wrong, you basically like do your best to make it fit. Okay?
And you remove the border on purpose?
What's that?
You remove that border on purpose?
I stretch it out so when I print it I don't want to see it. Okay? There's other ways of dealing with it. We can put that on its own layer and then make that layer not print, but I don't want to go there right now. Okay? We'll get there. Because eventually we're going to start doing multiple viewports on one sheet, which we can do, and then we'll deal with that. So for now, just let it go beyond. Okay? It's like a low-tech way of dealing with it. So once I click on 6 inches equals a foot, now I'm okay. I could go back to MS, type in P for pan, and pan around. You have to be very careful not to use your scroll now. Now you want to use P for pan so you can move it around. Because if I try to use the center button, I might actually turn it, and I lose the scaling. So I'm in MS, and I type in P for pan, and then I can pan around. Just trying to center it better visually. Okay, there's no right or wrong. Then I go back to PS for paper space. So far so good? And once you guys try this, it's going to be, you might see the pitfalls.
So if you scroll in and scroll out, it changes the scale.
You got to go back.
Do you get that scale? Like, does it write it out for you? Like, when you print it? Does it tell you what's...
No, you have to know what it is from me selecting it and going to properties. And then if I go to scale, I can see it's 2 to 1. It's the same as 6 inches equals a foot. Okay. So far so good? We have more to do. And what we'll do is we'll go through this and I'll have you guys attempt this for whatever you have at the moment. Okay?
How can you tell if your paper space or not?
I could just tell by like this getting highlighted. So if I go in the model space, my crosshairs fall into there. So you see how I have no extension lines? Turn it to MS. I'm inside here now. Like I can't go out. And I can start picking things. So I'm all of a sudden like bound inside of this thing. Where here, for now I have the arrows. So if I type in PS, I have my crosshairs. Okay? Now you see how this stuff looks all jaggedy? Don't worry, it's not going to reprint that way. If we go into MS and type in regen, it'll regenerate it. Okay, it's just a visual thing. Go back to PS, we're outside. So in case you were asking, why does your stuff look altered? Okay, so far so good? So let me try to print now, and then we're going to set up the line weights, okay? So now I can type in plot, or I can go to AutoCAD and go to print and go to plot. Okay, so I go to the application icon, A, can go to print and then go to plot. You can see by default the PDF is stuck. It has the right size, but now the line weight information is gone. If we go here down to the bottom, there's this little arrow. of that dial. If we click on that, it's going to extend it. So this little arrow down here extends the options. And then we want to go here to plot style table, pen assignments. Where it says none, I'm going to click on it and go to acad.ctb. We're always going to work within the acad CTB file. We can also make a new one, but we can start with the CTB file of acad. Okay? So we're activating that. To the right of that, there is a little edit button. I'm going to click on that edit button. That brings up our plot style table editor. And you can see nicely color 1 through 6. These are our sort of colors that we're using. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are located at the top. That's why we want to stick with sort of these standard colors. And for each of the color, we have a specific type of setting. You can, but this is better. That way you're not thinking on layers, you're just thinking on colors. Because what's going to happen when you do it on individual layers, you might end up with 100 layers. So would you rather change 100 layer line weights or 6? Does everyone understand that? This is where this is more powerful than doing it in the layers. Otherwise you're doing it per layer and you might end up with 20 layers. And then you have to go and physically change 20 layers. And once they don't come out right, you got to go back and change each layer. And that doesn't come out right. You got to go back and change each layer. And that doesn't come out right. So about 5 times into it, you're going to be like, why did I do it this way? This way, I go just to a color, and I might just need to change one color, and I change the plot. So here you're controlling at the output, at the final point. And it's all about color. Because you might have 20 different layers because you have 20 different materials. But when you give it a color, it's all about line weights. Yes?
How did you get that again?
Go to the application icon, which is the big A. Pull down, go to print, and then go to plot. And then down at the bottom, there's a little arrow that's, if we click on it, it opens it to the right. And then we switch this to ACAD, and then we click on this. If you don't have ACAD, we can go to new. So let's go through new. Do you guys have anything there?
Yeah.
You don't have ACAD?
But not ACAD.
What do you have? Like-
AEC standard, AIA color.
All right, so someone's customized that one. What's that? And you actually didn't push print. So let's look at new. If you want to make a new one from scratch, you can always pick one of these and we can customize them. But if we go to new, it goes through a little wizard. And what we want to do is from scratch. And then we can give it a name. So we can call this ARC 170. And then we can just keep on and say finish. And now we have ARC 170 CTB. It's fine. You can make a new one.
So CTV is a file type,
It is a file type, and we can copy that file type and we can take it with us.
but are we trying to go to PDF?
No, CTB is just recording the pen styles. Has nothing to do with the print. It's going to print a PDF. The .ctb is just keeping track of the layer types and the colors that they're associated with for line weights. Or the line type, sorry.
Okay, so then how do you customize it?
So you come here, you go to new,
Well, no, once I have new.
just select it, make sure it's highlighted, and then click to the right, there's an edit button. So let me go through it all for the recording, and then you guys can ask questions. So just watch, and then I'll do this again.
Mine does not look like that.
That's all right. One thing to keep in mind, guys, when you guys come in, restart the computers, because other classes are in here, and sometimes they do customize them. So we know we're using color 1 through 6, right? So I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to select 1 through 6, holding down the Shift key. This is a standard Windows command, right? And for color, I don't want it to use object color because I don't want to print in color. I want all my colors to be black. Right? So I just turn all my colors black. Then I want to go through each color and give it a specific line weight. Okay, so under line weight it says use object line weight. I don't want to have, I want to go to color 1 and start assigning line weights. And this will be in millimeters. Okay, the reason why it's based in millimeters is because a lot of these line weights are based in, like when you think of ropidographs, whoever used to ink by hand, you probably had like 00, 000. Those always referenced millimeters. So for those of you that are used to that or have your rapidograph pen set, this is what you want to reference in the sense of line weight. So millimeters are really small. So we can go like we can start applying line weights. So I might say for red it's 0.1. There's no right or wrong here. This is all about style and legibility. Okay? There's no like right or wrong. Other than you want to make sure you're going darker. Reading it, the output can be right or wrong, but you got to start somewhere. So I'm just applying, increasing this as I go up.
There you go, Robert.
And maybe my darkest line for now will be 1 millimeter. Okay? So I'm going from 0.1 to 1. So again, I select all these, change to black, change that. I hit save and close. And then I can click preview. And you can see now my line weights. And my colors are not, my lines don't come out in color. They come out in black like I anticipated. You can see my viewport is picking up a little bit of my installation over. That's fine. Here are my 3 line weights. Heavy, medium, light. Okay. If I'm happy with that, I hit OK. And it asks me to save a PDF. I'm just going to save this on the desktop. And there it is. Okay. And then the reason why I like doing a PDF is so I can come here and take a look at it. Take a look at it. Is this what I want? Does that look correct? Line weight wise. And we'll talk about line weights more, but this is like where I want you guys to be by next week. With your detail drawn. All right. And then from there, maybe I'll ask you guys to do is just, since we're going to do the lecture, I'll just have you email me.
Email
The PDF. Right, let me stop the recording.